Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live session at the Reactors. My name is Rav, and I'm the Program Manager at Reactor London. Before we get into the session, please take a moment to read our Code of Conduct. We're all here to learn, so please be respectful, please be kind, and also the chat is open, and we do encourage you all to participate. Today, we have a very, very exciting session with Tricia, who is a customer services lead at Avanade. She's also a Microsoft MVP. And today, she's going to be talking all about how Power Platform can locate your perfect match. So without further ado, I will now get Tricia up and she will lead the session. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Rav. Thank you very much for that brilliant introduction.
So over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so everyone, I would like to start off by, introducing the session and introducing myself. So we're going to be talking about a Power Platform love story. And the reason it's called a Power Platform love story will become very apparent very shortly. Let's start off by talking a little bit about me. Who am I? Well, I'm Tricia Sinclair, and I've got over 10 years of experience in the CRM space. I am 1/3 of the Microsoft Quiz team, along with my fellow Quizsters, Andrew Bibby and Keegan Stanton. And I'm also the founder of the Power Platform School, which aims to bring more diversity into technology through education and through mentorship. I'm the customer service offering lead at Avanade, specializing in B365 customer service and the digital contact center platform. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP and MCT. I've put my contact details on the screens. If you would like to contact me about customer service, about things I actually blog about, which are customer service and DevOps, please feel free to connect with me. Or if you'd like to continue the discussion that I'm sure we'll have today, please feel free to connect with me, and happy to do so. Now, let's start off by talking about what we're going to be seeing today. I'm going to be giving first a little preface about learning the Power Platform, and then going into the actual demonstration before rounding it off with the summarization and the acknowledgements in a typical book fashion. So let's start by talking a little bit about the history of the Power Platform. Only 3 dots, but this history is so much wider. I started out in, as I mentioned, CRM over 10 years ago, and a lot of things have changed. Back in when it was first Microsoft CRM, I'm sure we all remember, everything was just combined. And it was actually fairly easy to be a know-it-all, actually know all the functionality that the solution had, because you had all the modules in one application and it was quite tight. But then in, I think, later on, Microsoft decided to actually split the functionality. CRM was actually no more. I would say the traditional CRM was no more. It was modules. Modules were born, and this was actually the grandfather of the Power Platform as it is now. Different applications were born. So sales, it became split from service. The creation of field service was introduced because of the acquisition of Field One. And, PSA, now project operations, was introduced. So there's a lot of different modules that were then introduced. This kind of affected the learning that everybody could do, because where before you could pretty much have all the information to hand and know all of the things that you would need in order to extend or provide the best solution for customers. Now it's not so easy, because there's a lot of functionality in each individual module that you just can't get to. And now that's all been blown, because now with Power Platform introduced from 2019, it's also introduced a continuous path where there's just new functionality to be added all the time. And of course, it's basically changed how we solution products, because it's no longer tied to the default first-party applications that Microsoft will provide. Now customers are able to kind of build their own custom solutions based on the Power Platform, but also grow into the standard applications that Microsoft provide as well. So there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of things that we need to learn, but it's very difficult to learn it because they're just things changing all the time and there are things being introduced all the time. So how do we actually learn about all these things? Well, one thing that I do is I'm aware of how I learn. There are different ways of learning. You have visual learners who need to see it in order to understand it. And then once they see it, they've learned it, they understand. You also have people that will listen and they need to hear the different steps in order to understand what they need to do. You also have kinesthetic learners, of which I am one, and these people need to do in order to learn. So I can hear, I can see, but if I've not done it myself, I probably won't retain that information. And then you also have people that will learn by understanding, hearing, maybe even seeing, but they've got to write it down, write down everything. And once they've written it down, you understand. You also have people that will be a mixture of these types of learning. So you might be a visual auditory learner, or you might be a kinesthetic, also reading, writing learner. That's totally fine. Figure out the way in which you learn. I figured out the way in which I learn. And that's important for this session because this is actually what this session stemmed from. I needed to learn how to create Power Apps. In my day-to-day role as customer service lead, I don't have to build a Power App. That's not my role. My role is to understand what customer service can provide, understand the first party module, and be a subject matter expert for that. We have a lot of other lovely people in the community and in Avanade that does have that understanding of Power Platform and Power Apps. But I don't want to leave it to them. I want to learn the Power Platform so I can solution better. I can understand what the limitations are, and I can understand how this can fit in to customer service and the contact center in the best way possible. So this is actually why I chose to put pen to paper and put my finger to the keyboard and actually build out an app, which I will show you later, that I use to help with my learning of creating a Power App. Now, the value of self-learning, like just like how I am, this is self-learning for me. I'm learning how to create apps. I'm learning the best way to put things together in a way that allows me to then go to a customer and speak knowledgeably about what can be done and can't be done. That's the first step. Of course, once you actually start talking to a customer and start building things in a production environment, that will give you another level of knowledge that you won't get just by self-learning. But it all starts from self-learning. And a lot of people, they struggle with this because of time. I struggle because of time. But unfortunately, to be successful, we have got to make time for self-learning. It's super important. So one of the things I suggest with my mentees and with everyone that I talk to is by just speak to your supervisor, speak to your project manager, speak to your partner about making time, putting aside time for your self-learning. It's a part of your self-care. It's your self-care to help further your own career. And understanding how you learn is going to feed into this, because that's going to show you what the different things that you're going to need to do and prepare in order to create that self-learning center, if that makes sense. Another thing as well in terms of self-learning is finding something that you're passionate about. So for me, I like to date. I mean, who doesn't if you're single? Actually, if you're not single, you should still be dating your partner. But it's important for me to kind of reduce the amount of work that I'm spending on swiping on dating apps. So I figured, well, why not build a solution? And if you have something that you find that you would like to find a problem or find a solution for, that's what you should actually should invest in with your self-learning. So find a problem that you are passionate about and use what you're trying to learn to apply it to that problem, right? So what I've done is I have built a solution that's based on the Power Platform. And I'm going to now go into my Power Platform love story and kind of give you a little bit of a background into why I also built the app, which is also just a little bit of an excuse. So bear with me. So once upon a time, courtship was a public affair. Intentions were fairly obvious, with men that would call on ladies that they were serious about. And you might have your rogues, but in a large part, they were because family and society were watching on, and it kind of provided less opportunity for scandalous behavior. And it was in some part to do with women actually being very reliant on men for everything, because of course it was a very patriarchal society. In the turn of the 20th century, though, women's lib happened. And this then coincided with the popularity of cars, which then allowed couples to go out and about in public without as tight a chaperonage as they would have had in the past. So they would go out and they would dance the night away, absolutely unchaperoned. The term date, you might want to know, was coined from a suitor that was told, well, all the other gents are filling up my dates. So dating became a thing. Now, this then came to the first computer-based dating app or dating service, which was created in 1965 with the advent of the IBM computer. The IBM computer was used to match couples based on a questionnaire that they would fill out, and they would identify similarities and let them know which person they were similar with, that they would then be able to go out and see if they were actually compatible with. So in 1995, we then officially had actual internet dating. If we fast forward a couple of years into the emergence of social media, where access to people became just a click away, online dating used to be a thing that was more for loners or seen as for people who couldn't or wouldn't communicate. But to be honest, with social media, that kind of changed things because of the perception of being on your phone to interact with other people. You no longer needed to meet people in, face to face. It was now acceptable to meet people on an app on your phone. So it wasn't for loners anymore. That perception has changed. So if you, it also it leads to a lot more opportunities to meet people than before. And with the emergence of smartphones, people are more able to swipe, like, match, scroll their way to a new relationship. This also does change how dating is perceived, though, because as you swipe, obviously, there are more people that are there, and it's seen as like a never-ending rotation of available people. So it's kind of gamified dating. Will Dorrington has done a great presentation on the gamification of apps and the impact of that. Highly recommend that you find it on YouTube and have a look at it. Now, Tinder, which is one of the more popular apps, will allow you to look at profiles, swipe left, swipe right. Bumble, of course, the woman needs to speak first or initiate contact first. And then, of course, Hinge, which kind of is heavily reliant on social media integration. So there are so many different apps and just more apps being added to the market. It does kind of change how dating is perceived. And to be honest, personally, I'm not on apps like that anymore. But when I built this, I was swiping and I was just tired, right? So I built an app that would kind of help me. So what we're now going to do is we're going to go into the demo of the app so I can show you how we leverage the Power Platform to kind of help me with the repetitive nature of swiping on these apps. So I built a Power App, and we're going to go into why we use these different components and what components we use. But this is the full story and the full vision of what I want to create. I want to have a Power App that's going to let me see who's out there. I'm going to have a Power Automate flow that's going to help me save my time and automate a lot of my processes. Power Virtual Agent that's going to allow me to have the initiation of the conversation without me having to be there. And Power BI that's going to help me analyze one of the questions that's typically asked. What's your type? I actually don't know. So if we can actually, by using data, find out what my type is, why not? So caveat, GDPR. I am not going to be live Tindering on this platform. So I have pre-recorded and I have pixelated the images for the privacy of people concerned. Okay, so we're now going to just showcase. So here we have the Tricia. This name was coined by my fellow conspirator in the creation of this app, Keith Watling, and he did the design. He's amazing. So we have the token. Now, bear in mind, what's actually happening here is a call is being placed to Tinder. Tinder, when you actually open Tinder, it only gives you one profile at a time. But behind the scenes on your machine, it's actually stored in memory 10 profiles when it actually calls the API. And how did we get this? Well, there isn't actually a connector, but we'll go into that. We kind of reverse engineered Tinder to get the API, and then we created a flow that is now going to pull the profiles in and allow me to see all the profiles that was returned from the API call. And now I can review these profiles in one go instead of one at a time. I can specify which ones I like. And with one button, it will send a message back to Tinder to say which ones I want to like and which ones I do not want to like. So if I basically click on that lovely little heart, that's me saying, yes, I like this person. I want to swipe left on this person. If I don't click on the heart, that's me saying, no, I want to swipe right. So this is basically reducing the number of swipes and buttons I would have to click. That makes sense. Now, the red X's that you'll see is based on another trigger, and that is based on me now also using Power Automate to, first of all, send the bio. So each Tinder profile has a bio. That bio could be negative, and there's some negative bios. There's also some interesting bios with a lot of red flags in the bio, which are phrases or keywords that I just would not look at. And it's basically making a call to Dataverse to identify what those keywords are. It's making a call to the sentiment analysis in AI Builder to see what the sentiment is. And then it's returning a red X to say which ones are a no go for me. Another thing as well, as I press Tinderize Me, it's actually saving information into Dataverse. This information is actually going to be used for analysis for me to understand how can I better predict which profiles I would say yes and no to. Now, as I swipe, as I get new profiles, another call is actually being made to the Face API, which is a part of the Azure Cognitive Services. That's storing information like their hair color, if they have a beard, if they're wearing glasses, if they're bald, etc. That allows the machine to understand what that person actually looks like. So if I click on the prediction model, the predict button, which at this point, to be honest, isn't actually there. So what I've done this before. So I actually put the video of the previous app, which will actually show what that prediction will look like. But in the background, there's an AI model that's actually been built using that historical data. And what it will do is it returns a true or false, whether or not I will say yes to the person or not, based on their facial attributes, based on the bio, based on the job, based on their schooling as well and their age. So with all these attributes, it allows me to know who I'm actually saying yes and no to in a better way. So I can now just choose who I can kind of now just reduce. If I want to basically look at what the machine is telling me to do, what AI is telling me to do, I can just now look for anyone that isn't red, if that makes sense, because what will happen is it will go red, that profile will go red. And if not, then it will stay white. Now, in the time of doing this, interestingly enough, it's only ever shown me 2 profiles that the AI model has actually approved of. And interestingly, I am actually still in touch with one of those persons. So I think it did a very good job at identifying who my kind of people are. We couldn't date because we weren't physically compatible, but in terms of friendship, he's a really good friend of mine now, and I really would put this all down to the AI builder and the Power Platform. It was amazing. It's great. So this will, one second, let me see if I can move this along so you can see what that looks like. No, okay, but it does go right. So I'm not gonna go into it because I'm just conscious of time. I really want to show you what's behind the scenes. Okay, so we have behind the scenes a Power App. Obviously, the goal was really to reduce the amount of time spent swiping on each individual profile. Power Apps really allowed us to provide a way to do that by changing the visual representation of the profiles. Instead of one at a time, we're able to bulk swipe. So it does allow you that flexibility of what you want your data to look like. That's the point. It allows you to view and manipulate data. So instead of one at a time, I can bulk review and I can analyze each profile and I can highlight profiles which I wouldn't invest in due to either, for example, lack of data, for example, no bios or keywords or phrases that are just not my thing at all. Red flags, trust me, we really need to be conscious of red flags in bios. The effort to build a solution, to be honest, using code would be so much greater. I remember when Dynamics used to come out with a new solution every year. It was a yearly release as opposed to every 6 months. And believe it or not, I would actually do something quite similar with Dynamics as well. And it's quicker to do it using Power Apps and more flexible to do it with Power Apps than how it used to be done. And if we wanted to do this with code, it would be a lot more complicated, a lot more things to consider. So it's just easier. I would also have access to this app directly on my phone without having to go through the creating a specific app for the App Store. I actually have access to it on my app just like any other app. So Power Apps really allows us to show the data, and it allows the data to be manipulated. It works natively with the other parts of the component, which is Power Automate. Now with Power Automate, this is allowing data from third-party systems to be pulled into Power Apps. And it does a lot more than that, to be honest. It's for the scope of my solution, that's actually what it was used for. I am actually more comfortable with Power Automate because it's such a core part of the Dynamics 365 suite. And if you are a Dynamics 365 developer or an Office 365 person, you're pretty much going to be using Power Automate quite a lot. Power Apps less so. Power Automate is fairly standard. So at a high level, we're able to use cloud flows, which can be triggered based on a schedule or based on an event that uses connectors to like well-known applications or solutions. At last count, I think there are over, I want to say 500. Don't quote me on that, but it's easy to find out. There's also the ability to integrate with on-premise applications using an on-premise gateway. And that, by the way, for those who aren't aware of what on-premise means, it just means that the applications are not based in cloud. We can also use what's known as RPAs or robotic process automations or desktop flows, which automate common processes or tasks. That's also going to work on-premise or cloud as well. And that really allows us to automate standard repetitive tasks. Like in the past, I've used desktop flows to automate the creation of my timesheets, which is really repetitive and boring. And I have to do that every week. So I built a desktop flow in my self-learning that helped me in my actual working life, which was perfect. So in this solution, we're using Power Automate to pull data from Tinder and populate the app with details of each individual profile. And we're using Power Automate, as I mentioned, to call the Face API, which is part of the Azure Cognitive Service, and it was providing details about the face in the image provided. So for example, their hair color, their age, if they were wearing a beard or they're bald. I should be transparent and mention that the characteristics part of the Face API is going to be removed because as part of AI for Good, it was determined that these could be negatively construed to deny services to groups of individuals. So that it's there now, but it won't be there towards the end of this year. Power Automate was also used to help with the analysis of the bios for each profile and return a value to indicate if it was a good bio or not. So red flags were very important. Another part, we mentioned that Power Automate was used to call Tinder. Now, bear in mind that Tinder does not have a connector for Power Automate, right? There are a lot of connectors that are available for Power Automate, and that does mean that as a developer, I don't need to build my own web service or web method to integrate with my own app. It's all wrapped up in this connector that's been tested, it's been verified by Microsoft. It's going to save me time and allow me to build my solutions quicker. For my case, I couldn't use a native connector because no one has actually built a dating connector. I did look, there wasn't any. So I had to build a native connector for Tinder, right? And I will not make it available on the Microsoft app space. No. Power Automate does allow the creation of custom connectors. So if there is an app or a service that does have an API that you don't have access to a connector for, you can create your own custom connector. Bear in mind, Tinder does not have a public API as well, so please don't look for it. In order to do this, what I did was I looked at the traffic that was being called from the Tinder website and identified the calls that were being made and created my own web service that I then used to create the connector from. But you can actually do something quite simple using like Postman. So if it works through Postman, you can save that collection and then just basically import it into Power Automate, and that will create a custom connector for you. So now I have my own Tinder connector, which is great. The other thing as well, final thing before we go into questions, is really using AI Builder to improve and enhance my analysis of the profiles. So I wanted to be able to predict and then in the future automate these processes. Now, AI Builder provides custom AI models, for example, prediction, object detection, invoice processing, etc. So it's going to reduce that time instead of you having to go to, the AI module to build your own, AI, what's it called? Instead of going to Azure to actually build your own AI model, you can just basically use AI Builder with a lot of your own standard modules and leverage that. And that's what I did. I pointed it in the direction of the historical data, which was hosted in Dataverse. And using that, you can see here in the screenshot, it's identified the most influential data. It's given me a score on what the grade of the score of the prediction. It's not perfect. I can improve it by adding more data. But for now, I think that would be good enough for what I need. And it's basically mainly looking at the bio and the date of birth and the age. It was interesting because Tinder does give you the date of birth. And you also get the age from the Face API. So you're able to kind of compare them and actually see, well, that's how old you are, but how old do you actually look? That was an interesting, look into things. So the prediction model does look at that to see how well you're living, I guess, and will give me feedback based on that score, which was pretty cool, I thought. Now, Remember, before we go to questions, my takeaway from this, you're not going to know everything. I don't know everything. Where I am in my career, for some reason, people think, oh yeah, Tricia is a guru. Now, I might be a guru in my specific slice of my heaven, but I don't know everything. Neither will you. No one knows everything. Always keep learning. Keep learning things that you're passionate about. Keep learning things that you see and you're interested in. Go out and find things to, take your learning further, right? Find your learning style. How are you best capable of learning? And if that is by doing, then find something to do. Find a problem that needs a solution. You can even find a problem for a friend, for like a charity, something that is going to help you learn the tools that you need to learn the functionality that you need to learn. Use the available resources to hand. Now, I'm extremely lucky that I'm a part of a community that's willing to give a helping hand. And there's so many resources available that it was not difficult for me to build this. But if you do need help, and you're basically talking about Power Platform, you have a lot of communities available online that will help you if you call them. So you have the Power Apps community, you have the Power Automate community, you even have the Power Virtual Agent community. And that's actually one thing that I want to mention. So in the future direction of this app, it's not finished. Previously, because what actually really happened is my environment died, so I had to rebuild everything. But I had a Power BI desktop, Power BI report that actually showed me the results of what I was swiping yes to and what I liked. And I also had a Power Virtual Agent bot that initiated the first connection to my matches. So that I'm going to basically re-add that. But of course, with the introduction of ChatGPT, it's made it even more interesting, because what I do intend to do now is send it my bio, send ChatGPT my bio, and I want to see if it can basically provide the best first response to profiles. Yeah, that would be really interesting. I'll let you know. So the other thing is, yes, use your resources. Of course, practice. Keep practicing. You're never going to remember everything if you don't keep practicing. Once you've learned something, try to add this into your daily, routine, into your projects, into solutions that you can, where you can, or just your own at-home projects, right? But also, last but not least, please, 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 fill out your dating profiles properly. No one wants blank bios. Complete them. That's my ask of you, okay? Now, I want to basically really, really thank Keith. Honestly, I could not have done all that with Keith. All you saw there, to be honest, most of that was Keith. I was basically saying, this is what I want. It's not working. Keith to the rescue. He was amazing. Like, seriously, with friends like that, Keith, amazing. Matt Devaney's site on it, things that I didn't know how to do, I found the answer on Matt Devaney's site, and it was really well written, really well documented in terms of pictures and everything. So I highly recommend Matt Devaney's site, and definitely major thanks to Keith. Do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions, Trish.
Yay.
A lot of nice comments saying genius, really cool stuff.
But do we have okay, so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions now. So feel free to put it in the comments, and I'm happy to answer questions about how we did it, maybe why we did it, how you can do it, what you can do.
Right, so we have one question from Steve. Could you bring data from more than one site service into your view, see matches/profiles from Tinder and eHarmony and Match, etc., in one single view and send the response back to the source app.
That would be a very interesting solution. Now, I did figure out that I could actually create a similar connection to Bumble. So I have created a Bumble connector as well. So you can actually bring those together in Power Automate because, of course, what you're doing is you're manipulating data. So you can bring disparate data sources into your Power App, yes. But it's going to depend on the availability of the endpoint and if they will allow you to connect to their endpoint. So far, I've only identified those two sites that do have that allowance, if that makes sense. Not that you should, but it's allowed. Any other questions? Thank you for that question, Steve. That'll be interesting though. Because if we actually pulled in data from everything, so we pulled in data from Tinder and we pulled in data from Bumble and eHarmony, you can then also do a check to see if they are cross-pollinating across the different apps and pull it all together. You can have like a dating 360 view of your profile. Okay, that's a bit scary, but it's quite interesting. Any other questions?
So to follow on, I think Steve has just left a comment. So what could we do to extend this into a different arena? Might be to use a similar process to search recruitment profiles, for instance.
Well, with recruitment profiles, I think the interesting thing there is, of course, you have to have permission to you're going to be provided the information. I don't think you can automate searches. Well, you can automate searches to maybe like LinkedIn, etc. But there then is a moral question to that. So you could actually create an app that would provide access to people that you might have met at an event that are looking for roles. So I know we've done that before. And you can then link information from different sources to them to get that rounded view and make decisions. But I don't think you would do that when you're actually trying to assess someone's suitability for a role. So yeah, that's a very hard question, Steve. But hopefully you can pull and use some of the different components that we saw here to create a app that will be suitable for.
But how about maybe via LinkedIn Recruiter, for example?
Yeah, you could actually pull in profiles from LinkedIn Recruiter, pull in oh yes, you could. And then based on the keywords, you could then identify who might be a best fit for a particular role that you're trying to fill. So you could do something like that. Yeah. Yeah. But you would need access to the API. And I think LinkedIn has one of the most locked down APIs that you could have. So there's that challenge. Any other questions?
I think we'll give it like a couple of more seconds, like just so people can add in questions.
I hope that this was very entertaining and also very educational. The aim was really to kind of show how you could help yourself learn not just the Power Platform, but different technology, because to be honest, we all find it hard to learn. Think outside the box. It doesn't necessarily need to be something just focused on work. And yeah, if you'd like to keep talking, if you have a question that you don't really want to ask here, feel free to connect with me and ask on any of my socials. Thank you all.
That's great, Trish. Thanks very much for this amazing session, and thanks very much for giving your time to the reactor. And yeah, have a lovely weekend, and have a lovely weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you again on another episode. Thanks, Trish.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.